Howdy y'all, my name is Dave, and welcome to Songs of Six. Today we're going to be going over how to build efficient production buildings. Let's get into it. Alright, and welcome back to Split River Plains, where we're going to be working today in the very, very little available space all the way down at the bottom. And let's go ahead and grab a carpenter here, and we're going to start off with just a very basic square building. And the first thing I want to talk about is workbench sizes. So there's basically one size workbench I tend to use, and that's because, let's go ahead and place one down here and grab this little guy. So this plus here and this plus here, this is where raw materials are stored. And then this little guy that looks like a Space Invader here. Doot, 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 doot. Joke for the over 40 crowd. This is where the actual work is performed. And the reason I always choose this workbench is it has the most sort of functional spots versus any of the other ones. If you go to a smaller or larger size, you'll notice the number of usable spots is, a less greater proportion than any other. And even if you go to the double wide size of this guy, you can see that there's kind of a layer it adds onto the top. The right size? There we go. So even if you want to do a double wide, you're better off just taking this one and then stacking them back to back like that. So, it kind of depends on whatever you can fit in, but if you can fit one of these, always try to go with that. So let's just try to pack this thing full of workbenches for now. I'm just going to click and hold D to fill this up real quick. And we're going to need space for workbenches, but we're going to not workbenches, auxiliary stations, but we're not going to worry about that just yet. Let's see. One note on the auxiliary stations is you'll notice when I put this up here, well, first of all, notice how it says plus 0.13, and I drop one down and it gives us 12%. These use different rounding. That's just a thing we get to work around. But another thing to note is you'll see this one takes up 12 spaces, and if we go to the 2 wide here and put down 6 of these, 6, you'll notice we only get up to 59%. So in the case of, really, of all times, you know what, we're just going to ignore that and let the base figure it out. It's wired to be able to handle at least the white shimmer. The plague's the only one I have to really do much for. But yeah, you'll notice this number is going to go up real high. We're just going to ignore it though. So the smaller workbenches are less efficient than the larger ones. I think that's kind of like your reward for being able to pack in these bigger ones. So if you can, at least for the crafting ones, the larger ones are more efficient, so try to use those where you can. You always want to get to 100%, and keep in mind that this number is rounding. So sometimes if you see like a, 100%, this might actually be somewhere around 99. So try to get up a little higher if you can, just to make sure you're actually at 100%. But that's really the big thing with the workbenches is try to use try to use this size one. It has the most usable spots versus any of the other ones. And when it comes to auxiliary stations, the larger ones are better. That's kind of the most important things for building these the crafting buildings. The refineries work a little bit different. Because, their workbenches are shaped differently, and their auxiliary stations scale directly. You're not going to see the efficiency benefits by trying to use the larger auxiliary stations. Another thing to keep in mind is try to use 2 wide doors, and you'll notice that you can get away with 2 wide doors before your isolation drops, versus, the words I'm trying to use. If you use a bunch of single wide doors, your isolation will drop just about as fast as using double wide doors. So double wide doors don't really impact your isolation as much as you might think. And when you have single wide doors, when your plebeians try to walk through them at the same time, they'll actually slow down when they run into each other. So if you have two wide doors, that solves that problem. They'll path next to each other and they won't slow down as they path through. So keep that in mind, and also try to keep in mind, what the traffic flow through the building is going to look like. And on a related note, let's get into some more complicated rooms. Autosave. Those are, we're still doing fine. See, let's grab this paper maker over here. And, there's definitely a few mistakes I made in this and ways I could have made it better. And, oh, we forgot to turn off planning. Sorry, turn on planning, rather. Let's grab that again. I don't want anyone to be trying to build these things while we're playing around. Let's go ahead and edit this and kind of talk about, what I did wrong and what are some of the efficiencies I could build into this better. First of all, I have no idea why I left out these workbenches. I'm guessing it was just an oversight. Another thing is, considering the flow of traffic. With this building, let's go ahead and look at it real quick. Everyone who works in this lives over here. So they're all going to be walking into it and then going to their workstations, benches. Let's go back down over here. You can see they have to walk past all these auxiliary stations first. So that was kind of a mistake on my part. What would be a much better option is over here, where no one really comes in or can go out, to get rid of these spaces and try to pack all of our workbenches, auxiliary stations, man, I gotta stop mixing those up, over into this side. Maybe even get rid of those so we can use the slightly bigger ones. By the way, if you have a shrink room or expand room, holding shift will do the opposite. Drop in our auxiliary stations. And since they never need to go to these, we can kind of stuff them all in the corner and make the best use of our space over here. Of all these guys, you can see which ones we need to add back in later. Let's be 91%. And another important thing to note about auxiliary stations is they only need to be accessible from one side, which I think I just got rid of a good example of that. Here we go. So you can see, this we can highlight it. This one right here is only accessible by this one tile right here. And that's still a perfectly valid way to have it. So you can kind of really snake these all in together and make the best use of really awkward spaces. And that's a great way to use your auxiliary stations in a weird shaped building. Let's see if we can keep packing these in here. Actually, back along here would... see, so we can't put one of these here because that would block access to this right here, because I put a support here. Because these only have to be accessed from one side and they can be accessed from the back. But that means I can't cover it over here. That's why it's giving me that red tile. But this one isn't being blocked because it doesn't have a support there, so I can go ahead and do that. So get rid of all these again. %. Let's drop in some more workbenches and see what we can do. Got my favorite size there. Could do a smaller one here, but I think I might rather save the space for more auxiliary stations. Here, this would be a valid space, except I've got that right there, so let's go ahead and shrink the building a little bit. Nope, not that way. Thumb. That workbench back in. Go. And again, since these don't have to be accessed, we don't have to worry about, having this kind of weird traffic flow through here. Although we need to worry about our supports a little bit. Let's see how we can get away with that. Just don't want to block both sides of this. One. I'm going to go ahead and be okay with that, though. Let's see how many others we can toss in here. We're going to be about that section, then 96%. I don't remember what we started with for employees, but we can compare it to the other one afterwards to see what we've improved. But this will go into size storage and kind of what you want there and how that's going to work for you. It's probably more than we need. Right. I'm going to support there. Let's see if we can get some more into here. Again, that would be a valid position, but the building is a little bit large, so let's just go ahead and shrink down here since we're not going to be using that space anyway. So, now we need to add another auxiliary station to make up for that. Here I've got my my wider-ish opening. And one thing to note about these interaction spots is they can be accessed from the side. So I can put a 3-wide in right here, and that's still a valid spot. We need a support, so we can put one key one. Oh, because we blocked the interaction spot for this from the side. Oh, let's try a different spot for that support. Far away, that's bad. Maybe we can't use that trick here because we need that support. We can still do a 2-wide there, which is also going to get us 200%. Likewise, we can use this little space over here since it's available from one interaction spot here. So there we go. Now we've got this space is no longer taken up by our auxiliary stations. They're all in the back here where our plebeians will never go because they don't have to interact with these. They just need to be in the building. You've got some more workbenches, so we're up to 192 employees. Save. Let's see, we're at 192, and this one was at 180. So we've added an extra 12 employees. But the bigger gain is now they don't have to walk all the way past this or all the way back here to work. They don't have to walk as far. There's more employees. So if for some reason I ever wanted more paper, which I'm good on, barely, but we're importing the rest and really the world's supply of paper at this point. We're going to call that good, although I might drop that in later, so maybe I'll hang on to it for now. A little later. Fine. Let's see. Go ahead and take a look at that's called the refineries. Let's grab our bread-shaped bread. I'm going to talk about the meta of the workbenches on these and how they're a little bit different. So one thing to note is that with these, let's see, these tiles on the outside are going to be static regardless of what size oven or what have you choose. So the most efficient one is going to be the largest. And another difference is these, the auxiliary ovens or auxiliary what have yous, they're all going to scale directly. So using this size versus this size, all pretty much the same. And if you do see a perceived difference, it's usually because there's, they round differently. So keep that in mind. But, to show you kind of, like I said, the largest size is the best here, but let's go ahead and give ourselves some space to work in. The bread-shaped bread is very packed full, so it's not a lot of space to work in there. If you have some of these large ones, you have to add in so many supports to effectively tile them, which I know there's a better way to do this, but just kind of doing this on the fly. You pretty much have to do something like this to make them work. At which point you're straight. It's fine. You have to add in so many supports that it makes it almost not worth it to use them unless your building is kind of shaped in such a way, or you can put these up against the side to give them some support from the walls. Otherwise, if you're working in like a big open space, let's go ahead and use these. Grab those. It's almost better to use the one size smaller. That way you only need a far fewer number of supports. So it's kind of more efficient to do it this way. Also, it depends on what building size you're working with and all that. Just keep that in mind. If you find yourself, adding a ton of supports to try to work with these big ones, you might not be doing yourself any favors. Depending on my favorite response to everything, it depends. So just keep that in mind. If you find yourself adding a ton of supports to try to make these work, you might actually be losing out versus just using one of these smaller ones. So since we've gone over those a bit, let's talk about storage. I feel like people tend to really overdo it on storage and just kind of put down the largest one they can. And there are certainly situations where that's the best thing you can do. One of which I can think of is, let's say you have a city full of Dondorians that's being serviced by Garthemi, in which case you probably do want the largest storage possible, because you want to keep all your Dondorians like inside, working nonstop, and not going far to drop stuff off. And then you're going to have your Garthemi come in, grab the storage, and then move things wherever they need to go. That's kind of the only time I can think of where you might want this. And otherwise, my thought here is I can build more storage outside of the building. I cannot build more ovens outside of the building, unless I make another building. So, loud car that went by. Didn't want to talk during it. But on the note of logistics, our brother Oshan Man is going to be dropping a video soon, or possibly before I posted this, using a great trick. Go and get rid of that for now. I think I have an example of over here by my furniture maker. So, low autosave again. Should really decrease the frequency on that. Two things. One is if you put down a hauler and request a good, and even if it's turned off, mine are turned on and have workers set to them just to kind of use excess workers that I don't have right now because a quarter of our population is sick. Fine. Nobody dies from the white shimmer, almost ever. But if you set a hauler to whatever good you're looking for and then even turn it off, they will be... One of these guys going to drop off at it? No, of course not. We're not that lucky. But your taxmen will automatically deliver to these, so you can get raw materials directly to whatever building you need them at, or wherever you need them. I also tend to surround my markets in haulers, because that puts all the materials right next to them, and these just get dropped off to by the taxmen. So it really cuts down on how many people you need, both at your markets and your food stalls, and really anywhere. Another quick trick is, once these storage facilities fill up, the workers in these guys are just passed out everywhere. The workers in these will seek other places to drop off stuff, and that includes at transports. Whether that's a good thing or not for your base kind of depends on how it's wired up. But, keep that in mind, because you can have these guys, drop directly off at a transport and then get all the stuff out of there. I find that, it's one thing to make an efficient building, but it's another to actually get the materials out of it and where they want to go. The joys of logistics. Hauler nearby, and then you can also have transports and have people from these drop directly off into those. Been too long since I've recorded. My throat is not in the condition for this. what's we got here? I'm going to talk about some of the other buildings, so let's go ahead and grab a tavern and talk about kind of carpets and some of the problems they cause. Ooh. You may notice that when you're building one of these, let's put it down the right way, and even though I just removed it from here, it says I can't place it. That is because carpets take up interaction spots, even though they kind of really shouldn't. And you can see, even though I removed all the ones around this, it still says I can't place it. But if I remove the ones on the other side, around this guy, then we're good to go. So if you've ever run into that, that's what's going on there. You just have to remove the carpets around it and then put them back down. Also, a fun trick for placing carpets, if you get tired of doing that, is just what I like to call the dot matrix putter method, and just grab the smallest tile, and you can just click and then move your screen around. Works better when you're doing large swaths, but yeah, handy little trick. Also, if you're having trouble trying to figure out where to get supports down, keep in mind, instead of doing double wides, you can do single wides, and either kind of stagger or offset them or use slightly different sizes. And that'll allow you to put down supports in slightly different areas, tucking them in the corners and things like that, like I've done here. So you get a better example of that on one of my accounts. Yeah, you can kind of see how they are offset and staggered here. So I could put these supports down just slightly offset, and that allowed me to pack in a whole bunch more into this small space. So just another tip. Also wanted to talk about the auxiliary stations on some other things don't always work how you expect, so it can be good to kind of experiment and see what's going to work the best. Example, on the crypts, they're kind of the opposite of what you might expect, and that is because the statues, which is sort of their auxiliary station, here right now we have a respect of 100%. So let's get rid of all these small statues and replace them with some big ones. You can see now we're down to 89%. So in the case of this building, it's actually the smaller ones that are the most efficient. And this can vary for pretty much any building. So, experiment and see what's going to work best for whatever you're trying to do. And like I said, it changes up a lot, and I believe the cemetery, the large tree, is the most efficient, and by a pretty large margin. So, always experiment, kind of in autosave. Experiment and see what's going to work best for you in your situation. And, as always, don't feel like you need to do things the most efficient way possible. I certainly have not in this base, and because of that, I've learned all kinds of things about how to min-max stuff, because I've kind of had to, because, I wanted to go with this weird aesthetic style and have so few roads going in and out of places. And, it's made for a fun learning experience and learning all kinds of weird meta stuff about the game. So, don't feel like you have to do things the most efficient way possible. But if you find yourself in need of these tips and tricks, this is kind of how they work. So I hope this helps you, and happy playing. Cheers, y'all.